Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to, we believe it's episode 60 of Cocktails and Pajamas. I'm Heidi Ferguson, one of your co-hosts, and next to me is Miss Fidesta Ramsey. And we're both back on the East Coast where it is, very chilly, quite cold. I have been layering a lot when I go out, insides for sure, but also when I go out, I'm laying a lot more than I typically do. So we're in a freezer here on the East Coast. So welcome everyone. We hope that if you want to say hi, you will give us a little shout out, little thumbs up on Facebook, whatever you choose. So I don't know if you're ready. No? Okay. So I'll check in as far as how I am doing, how I've been doing. Happy New Year, second week. Um, wow. So one of the things that I do, kind of starting near the end of the year into the new year, is I create intentions for myself. And so I've been working on those and um, doing some, I want to kind of call them exercises or intentions to create deeper intentions, if you will. And that's been really lovely. And I've been working with a friend of mine, and that's been really sweet. And I did another retreat over the weekend, which was, they just keep getting better, a lot deeper. And the one thing that I want to talk about, and we can discuss it a little bit further, but one of the things that I've been noticing about myself, just my own self-awareness, is this. I feel I've been challenged on some level, and I don't know that I can necessarily pinpoint it, but I feel like I've had some challenges around communication recently. And the reason I say this is because I've had some glitches with a couple of people in my life, through email, and I'm like, what's happening here? And then more recently, you and I discussed, was it earlier this week, last week, whatever. Yeah, there was something that I missed in a communication that you had attempted to make with me, and I had missed that. And so what I learned is that Mercury is going into retrograde on Saturday. Saturday, very early morning, something like 2 a.m. And I'm like, okay, so not that we need to blame everything on the retrograde, but for those of you who are not aware of what happens during, one of the things that happens during Mercury retrograde is that when it comes to communication, whether it is in person, verbally, or with technology, different ways of communicating, it can get a little messed up. It can get a little funky. And so one of the things that we are advised of during the retrograde is to not sign a contract, to wait until it's over, to wait until the energies are really clear, that you are clear with yourself as far as what you're reading, what you are trying to state to someone, all those things, because this is a time where we can really get, I'm going to use the words, kind of outside ourselves, or maybe it's something that we aren't paying close attention to. Those are the words I'm going to use for myself. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that I just learned today that my cousin, who was very sick, not very long, he passed. And so just wanting to honor his life and honor his legacy to his children, the cousins, his grandchildren, and the interesting thing too is that his mother is my mother's sister, and his mother was one of the oldest kids, and my mom is the youngest of 13. So her nephew, so my mom's nephew, my cousin, and my mom are very close in age. I'm going to say they're probably within 5 or 6 years of age, which I'm like, what? But yeah, that's the way that relations work out and timing works out. But anyway, so yeah, feeling a little tenderness around that. And even though I didn't, pardon me, know him very well, I feel like as I get older, I'm more tender and sensitive to that, even with people I don't know well, and how precious life is. Yeah. So that's my check-in.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, seeing you and your tenderness and makes sense, even though it might not be someone you've spent a lot of time with. There's the link of family, and there's, as you said, like the preciousness of this being here for a brief time we have. Yeah. I love that you started with intentions. Like that feels juicy to me, right? What are intentions? How do we know when they're aligned? Like, how do we find them or just know what they are? And I have found, like, for me, intentions always come with like a feeling tone, like something I can feel in my body. It's just how I'm wired, I think. And this place that's kind of childlike and giddy and has wonder and has appreciation and joy, I think I'm feeling called, and the call is growing to keep calling her forth, because on the other side is the despair and the loss and the fragile humanness stuff, right? And I'm both tickled by it and a little surprised that that's the antidote. Surprised, not surprised. Because for me, watching my homeland just in this perpetual free fall, this collapsing in the last 5 months, and losing a very dear teacher that has been witness to my life since like ninth grade, and hasn't wavered in that, caring, showing up, witnessing, he and his wife. And yet what I'm most flooded with is like this unfathomable love. Like it's like unfathomable, the depth of it, the breadth of it, how big it feels to me. That's kind of why I'm using that word. That's all that's left on the other side of like being loved and loving. In this case, I mean, I'm sure the grief will come. It's probably big too. But yeah, the sincerity by which when death happens, I'm feel much more connected to something real in my heart, and like what matters, what really matters. If I've lost my focal point and I'm on the tedious to-dos or building a business, whatever it is, then there's this moment that it brings me back home. When people pass, just brings me back home to a very sincere awareness of life, like a good kind of humble. Yeah, so I think for me, this childlike wonder and joy and bringing enthusiasm and being excited, genuinely excited about things, feels like good medicine if I am to hold what sometimes feels like grief and despair and frustration and the other human spectrum on that side, right? So even though I think my intention is to bring more joy, and that's what it presents itself as, I think what it really is asking is balance, right? Like the intention's almost to balance the human fragility over here with like some just playful spiritedness. Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling all of that for sure. Yeah. So a couple of, actually, I'll share my words for 2022, which are courage, curiosity, and expansion. And as what I found to be kind of fascinating as I was creating this list, because literally each word came to me at a different time. They didn't all come at the same time. And as they each showed up, I was noticing how well they actually all work together.
Mm-hmm.
And because I can't have courage without being curious. And I can't have courage and curiosity without expanding myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so to think of that in really basic terms, I'm like, yeah, that's, that's kind of like if I think of myself on a scale when we talk about balance, right? For me, I feel like my status quo is going to be right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Where when I'm kind of just riding the wave, I'm like, I'm okay right now. I'm not too far over here where it doesn't feel good, and I'm not too far over here where I'm kind of out of my head kind of thing, right? Because I can get there easily. But
Yeah.
certainly, you know, in the middle, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling really in my own equilibrium. And because without that, I wouldn't be able to hold all that
Mm-hmm.
I hold. And I wouldn't have my back the way that I have my back. Um, and so I'm really appreciating those skills and those gifts that I have brought into my life for myself, and and the importance of them, and how even those gifts and skills have grown
Mm-hmm.
over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, amen to that. I feel enlivened, addressing life that way, having a dance with life that way. And I recently joined a women's circle that I should say rejoined. I've been a part of since nearly the pandemic began.
Mhm.
And what I knew then that I'm grateful for that past me was I knew I needed more holding because I was in fear, I was scared, it was confusing, things were changing so quickly. It was like Saturday, I felt like, okay, something's kind of funky, we should be mindful. And Sunday was like, no one's going to work, and all this stuff. And I knew in that moment I needed more holding. It's just a knowing. I signed up for this women's circle that has had maybe 3 or 4 iterations since. Um, and why am I telling you this? I think it's that place of needing more holding. Like the more I hold, the more holding I need.
Mm.
Right. So it's like before, when I used to clock in, clock out, I was like, oh, whatever. Now I'm building my business. So I need a business coach, or I need a coach to support me when I doubt myself, right? Or friends who can kind of see my blind spots and challenge me, all of that.
Mhm.
The thing I don't think I ever knew, and it makes so much sense now, is the more I hold, the more scaffolding and holding and support I need. And it feels good. Like community care feels really nourishing. I'm a co-regulator, so I'm not one of those people that wants to be alone and self-regulate. I really enjoy
Yeah.
and receive a lot of nourishment in this kind of a container. So yeah, I just want to share that with our audience. Like, if you're holding more, and I think everyone, I'm willing to bet most people would say they're holding more right now than
Mhm.
they were 2 years ago. And find ways to be held that feel right to you, right? It can be personal trainer, it could be a women's circle, it could be group of people that come and work in a community garden together. I don't necessarily think it has to look a certain way,
Right.
but just know, like, self-care is half of it,
Right.
and community care is the other half. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're feeling, and if you're having any sort of feelings like, oh, this is something that I should be able to do myself, or I have to do myself, or I don't want to be a bother. I really want to invite you to work hard on letting that go,
Mhm.
because what you will, not only what you will receive from others, but also receive from giving from others to others, is, it will blow your mind.
Mhm.
It will blow your mind, and your heart will explode with love. Because when we're receiving, goodness and support and all those yummy things, our heart can't not expand. I mean, it will naturally expand. And but we won't get that if we're doing it alone, or trying to do it alone, or judging ourselves about having to reach out. No. Because the truth of the matter is that we weren't meant to do it alone. Human beings, we need each other. We just do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, but
And
as
also,
you said, in
but
whatever, that's okay. And like you said, in whatever context, in whatever capacity that is, it doesn't matter, and it's going to look different to every single person. Do it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just adding on to that, this beautiful place of also not robbing the people around you who love you from being able to contribute to you, whether it's that you're leaning on their resilience while you're sad about something, or leaning on them in a way that's like you're both supporting each other, whatever. I know that when I want to give, like deeply, sincerely want to give, it is such a gift when someone I love can receive it. And I know a lot of good people who just want to give, don't know how to flex that receive muscle. And it can feel disappointing over here. Like, man, I really wanted to offer that up. And, this person wants to do it all themselves. You might think you're doing like something like valuable and like, oh, it's better for me to just do it by myself. But there's a whole level of intimacy and trust and connection and depth that you can't reach without like the vulnerability of receiving,
Right.
right? Because giving, I'm just going to assert that we have a level of control in what we give.
We 100% do.
But when I'm just thinking of people who are givers, there's some control there too. There's also altruism and goodness, right?
Right.
But when we're receiving, we have a lot less control of like what people are giving, and then how does it feel to like receive?
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel to be vulnerable like that? Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you bring up a really important point about the trust
Mhm.
piece, and I share that. The reason I'm bringing this up and reiterating is because um, I was in a relationship where um, the the person I was in a relationship with was not receiving. And I don't want to say they didn't have the capacity or didn't know how. They were just used to giving, 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 giving. And it always felt one-sided. And I never felt safe.
Mm.
I couldn't feel safe, because I thought, because in my mind, I was always questioning, like, what's behind that? What's behind that door? What's going to happen? It was almost as if in so many words, almost waiting for the other shoe to fall. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I don't know about this. What else, what could happen here? Because it was not on equal level ground. And so um, I brought this up in a conversation. Talk about a hard conversation. I did it because I wasn't feeling safe. And this is what I said to the person. I said, this is really hard for me to say, but I need to say it because I care deeply about you. I'm not feeling safe. And of course, they had no context for this. And they were like, what are you talking about? So I shared my experience. And this person said to me, I don't know how to receive. Literally said those words.
Mm.
And I just remember my heart feeling like just beginning to break a little bit. Like I was like, oh, that hurts to hear this person say this. And I felt very sad for them. And I said to them, okay, so you know when you're giving to me whatever it is you're giving to me and I'm taking it in, that's how you receive. I said, I don't know that there's a teaching tool here, but that if I can share anything with you, that I just want to kind of give you a tip on how you
Mhm.
can receive. Just keep your heart open. And when I said those words, I literally went like I said, keep your heart open. I clearly triggered something. And I didn't know this, but until in the moment, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what we're dealing with. And needless to say, the relationship did not last. It was, after this conversation that I really felt necessary to have, this person just kind of didn't ghost me immediately, but just kind of things leveled off a
Mhm.
little bit. And I just remember thinking how sad that, and I went through grieving around this and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I just thought how sad that this person isn't going to allow themselves to be in relationship with someone so that they
Mhm.
can receive,
Yeah.
won't allow themselves to receive. Therefore, there's no trust. Therefore, if there's no trust, there can't be a relationship.
Yeah. It's a huge disconnector. Right. And I think it's so interesting because I just watch all these good people do these interesting coping mechanisms, and we all have them, totally normal, right? There's no pathology around it. But there's this place of like, do you know it's creating disconnection to not receive? Or do you think you're just being that person that's just going to be the altruistic giver only? It's not mutual. It's absolutely not mutual. And I think of those moments like you braving that conversation as an opportunity, could have been an invitation for someone. Because when I can hear someone be self aware enough to say, I don't know how to receive, I get excited because at least they're problem aware.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
might not be solution aware yet,
right.
but at least they're not like, oh, I receive fine. Right. That I get scared
Yeah, me too.
when that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
So to me, this feels hopeful, even if maybe this invitation was too soon, too much.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because I've had people, and I think I was a lot less subtle in my feedback when I was younger, it
Okay.
sounds like, from what I've been told. And I had a former partner reach out and say, it was you who helped me get on the path. I mean, we didn't work out, and I thought it, just blew up.
Right, right.
But he was like, you're the first one who called me out on dot, dot, dot.
Mm,
And it led me to get curious, And so it's, sometimes we just don't know. And sometimes people will skip over, they'll leapfrog over 20 invitations, like
yeah,
because they're afraid or they don't know how or they don't have support, like all of that.
yeah,
But I just think it's an exciting moment if someone can actually say, gosh, I don't really know how to receive.
yeah.
That's like step one.
It is step one for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And I'm just kind of sitting in this place of like, what is, I have this Braving Intimacy workshop coming in February, and I'm trying to practice it in my own life. Like, what does it mean? Is this intimacy? Us sharing this way, is this intimacy? Maybe me setting a boundary with one of my parents, is that intimacy? To be honest instead of kind of pacifying, right?
Right,
Maybe challenging someone I love in something that I think is not really cool. Is that intimacy?
yeah,
I'm just kind of living in that question, sharing with you, hey, I kind of tried to say this like 3 different ways. I know I can cushion stuff, so I know my side of the street. And like, what happened? Like, is that intimacy?
Right. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. I'm still learning over here,
Yeah.
but it feels intimate to me. You know, it was way more intimate to bring that up
Yeah.
than to not.
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to find my own definition of what's intimacy
Right.
to me. And then where am I like taking the steps,
Right.
Am I reflecting something to my partner that might be hard to hear? Is that intimacy? Like, I don't know. It's just an exciting question that I'm holding.
Yeah. And I think the short answer, if there is a short answer, I think the short answer is that anytime that we not challenge any time that we bring the truth forward when the truth is hard,
Mm,
that is raving intimacy. For sure it is.
yeah.
And so, when we had our conversation a couple days ago about um when you said, well, I had shared with you that I didn't hear you say something.
Mhm.
And you had said to me, but I said this. And I said, I have no recollection. And then I shared with you what would have worked better for me.
Right.
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 And then I think in an email I said to you, I gave you another example. I said, someone else in my life, um, and I think this person probably still struggles with that.
Mhm.
Um, and I have a lot of compassion because this is my assumption. This is what I make up in my head. My best guess is that this person was never taught.
How to name needs.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Was never taught, didn't have anyone to example it for him or model it in any way. And so has gone throughout his life. And this is someone who came to the United States not speaking English. So imagine that, first of all, the language barrier itself, and
Mhm.
and then also not really having skills to communicate in a direct way
Mhm.
where people actually really get you. And so, and I think one of the things I said to you is you can always be, even if you think you're being too direct for Heidi, it's my language. Like, I would much rather someone be too direct with me
Yeah.
than not, because I'm just one of those people that if I don't hear it directly, I will probably miss it.
Well, and I think we were able to like create an example of that, right,
Yeah,
together. And
yeah,
similarly on this end of, I think to me, like what you asked me to say, right, for full transparency is like, oh, that feels really bold or kind of intense or direct, right? And you're saying, but that's what I'm going to hear. I'm not going to hear like the little bell. I need the big bell. Like that's
yeah,
kind of what I got.
yeah,
Where I think I'm still working on just naming the feeling like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed over here, right? Like I'm on like step one,
okay,
right? And then hopefully assuming someone goes, okay, well, do you need us to stop? Like what's going on? But learning the second part, which is like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need us to stop, right? Whatever.
yeah,
I think I'm still looking at like what's coming up in me that I need to share because like I'm struggling
mhm,
and I only get that part out. So it feels nice to have permission. I know I don't need permission,
sure,
but some part of me is like, hey, cool, with Heidi, I could say, whoa, hang on. This has been like, I need a break, right?
yeah,
And I don't know that everyone would be okay with such directness.
yeah,
Truly, I don't.
I agree,
Um, and I think that's a cool conversation for me to have with other friends,
yeah,
right? Like, hey, I kind of struggle once my number's up and
mhm,
I'm overwhelmed and I just want to hit the end button, but I, I don't know how to say it. And
right,
right, like, are you okay if I just time out, like call a timeout, right? Yeah. it's helpful for me too, because I think what happens to a lot of us, I don't know if it's just introverts, but like people who feel a lot, is that I'm feeling so much, I'm thinking it's reflecting out.
Oh, okay.
Like if I'm at an 8, I'm thinking I'm presenting as an 8, and you might be seeing a 3 saying, "Oh, like I'm kind of struggling to look at my calendar. Hold on." Right? But I'm feeling way more.
Mhm.
And just also checking that place for me of like, if you're presenting as a 3 but you're an 8, that's on you. To present more authentically,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So it's just like so many cool layers of learning in that,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah. And so many layers of growth.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
And
that intimacy, right? Like it's just like
oh my
all of
God,
that.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I like, again, anytime that we can go towards the truth when it's hard, that is intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that because we did pivot kind of quickly in that conversation. It was, we were the three of us, and then we pivoted to the calendar. And as it's interesting because as you just said that, I was like, okay, so you were feeling an 8 on the inside, but presenting, however you're presenting, we were all looking at our respective calendars.
Uh-huh. Fair.
So we
Yeah.
didn't have eyes on each other. We were
Mhm.
looking at our calendars because I know that I was focused on the calendar. Okay, so when can we get a date or whatever? Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. And so some of the attunements also dropped out because we're actually not
sure,
physically tracking. It's
sure.
a really good point.
Yeah,
It's it's one of the reasons I tell couples that when conflict arises, it's like stop, drop everything, face each other. Because sometimes the argument's happening with one person chopping the onions and the other person at the kitchen sink, and no one's tracking micro reactions, no one's tracking their partner
yeah,
or friend or parent, right? So it's like, it's why it's of the utmost importance. Like get in front of each other so that we can read cues
right.
at a time that's kind of volatile, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. And this is where I see the gift of conflict. Not that we had a big conflict, but the gift of, I think intimacy for me, just as I'm saying this, the word that comes up is revealing.
Completely. Yes, it is.
Like it takes courage to be revealing,
Yes.
to be like, gosh, everyone else looks okay, but I'm overwhelmed. Can I reveal that? you know?
Yeah.
Or hey, Uncle Racist, like I don't dig how you speak about people. Can I reveal that?
Right.
You know? And that's just my example because sometimes I hear people and I'm like, can't, where is it, let it go, and where is it, and speak up.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
revealing ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm on the top of a roller coaster before it drops sometimes,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. And I have shared that excerpt from Jeff Brown with you
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
conflict.
Mhm.
And if we would choose to come together as opposed to run away from each other during conflict, that is what creates intimacy. Every time.
Yeah.
Every single time. Yeah.
I feel
So
like the definition we were given was so anemic,
yes.
like intimacy being like this partnership and romantic dinners and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh no, that's like nothing compared to what this kind of work can be.
Right. And also I think we were given a slight when it came to the definition of conflict too.
Mm. Mhm.
I just had a conversation recently with someone and we were talking about the word conflict. And this person said to me, growing up, I heard the word conflict and I would, I went to fight, flight, or freeze.
Mhm.
And and what's interesting, and I almost was like, yes, me too. And something, I don't know what it is within me, but something within me, I want to go, I don't know why. I really don't. But I find conflict very curious
Hmm.
and I'm interested. I think that's what it is. I'm interested because if there's conflict, I want to know what's in the, what is the conflict? Like we can say we're in conflict,
Right.
but if that's all we say, we're in conflict, what's the conflict about? Like, let's dissect the conflict.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times people are, first of all, afraid of that word, which totally makes sense because, again, we've been slighted. We've been told that it's conflict's bad, avoid it at every cost. No, don't. Um, you're going to have courage. You're going to have to stay curious in order to expand, in order to create a tighter intimacy, and in order to create intimacy. Because if you do the other, I mean, that's what's going to happen to all your relationships.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah. And befriend it, right? It's a normal cycle. You're going to be attuned to people. You're going to be misattuned. It's going to get crunchy. You can repair it. Like that's going to happen, people.
Right.
Right. And I think this place of like, when I think of conflict, I think of like, there's needs in there, there's feelings in there, there's hearts in there, there's learning in there. There's often care instructions
Yes.
in there. Like it can be a treasure hunt, right? Yeah, in the moment, it's really uncomfortable. But like you said, if two people come together, if they're like shoulder to shoulder looking at the problem together, there's a lot of treasure there.
Right.
Oh, wow, you have a value there. Oh, wow, your feelings get hurt there. I get to know that about you. I get to tend to you better and care for you better by knowing that. And I think this place too of, I love that you say we've been slighted with that word, because all that depth and connection people want happens in the repair. So avoiding conflict means you avoid the depth and the intimacy and the trust too, which I get, we're human animals. We want to have pleasure and avoid pain, but you're not going to get the thing's not going to be available without.
Right.
Who are we in conflict? Who are we in repair? If it's all who we are when we go out to dinner and go dancing, it's pretty superficial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So I wanted to go back to the directness, and the reason, I just want to give a little context for one of the reasons that I'm as comfortable with directness as I am. I grew up with a mother who, I want to say, she doesn't really have a filter, which, and as one of her four children, I was used to I was just used to this way about my mother. And it wasn't, I didn't have the awareness of how her directness affected people until we were with other people, in the company of other people, and she would say something really direct, and I would just smile, because I was just like, that's my mother, like that's who she is.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of fascinating, and I noticed it more as I got older and started my personal growth work and my spiritual work and all this. And I just thought, wow, I know that I don't want to do that, because that can really be offensive. And even though she had no intentions of being offensive, that doesn't even matter. But it is how it lands on people sometimes, right? And I'm not saying this because I think you would ever be offensive, offend me in any way. But that is the reason why I am so comfortable with directness. When I say to people, please be direct with me, they just look at me like, like I have three heads or something. I'm like, no, really, you can be direct. And I guess if everyone had a mother, growing up with a mother like I did, they might be in the same boat. Yeah.
Yeah, I love knowing that about you. It helps frame the idea for me a little bit more, and also recognizing, in my culture it's like a lot of indirectness, right? And a lot of like cushioning and around the bush, but hoping someone gets it and whatever, which I've worked hard not to do.
Mhm.
And I think there is maybe a judgment in my head that sometimes directness can lack like tact,
Sure.
timing. Is
Sure.
this person even receptive in this moment to something?
Sure.
Which I think it truly can, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes be like, well, that might have gone better if you had set some context.
Right. Right.
Gotten buy-in that this person at this time is available for their like, spicy feedback,
Right.
right? And we're gonna stumble there.
Yeah.
But I like it as a way of being, like conscious directness,
Mhm.
right? Because that's still like the revealing thing.
Right.
Just like reveal what's really going on. I know I used to do this where like, there was nothing wrong, right? I'd say with my partner, but his spidey senses are up, right? He's got that hairline trigger. He knows something feels funky, and it doesn't build trust
Yeah.
to say, oh, it's nothing,
Right.
right? It builds trust to be like, oh man, like I'm struggling over here. I'm disappointed about something, and just kind of noticing it in myself. And I'm not throwing blame, but like just noticing there's this part of me that's coming up right now.
Mhm.
It's vulnerable.
Yes, it is.
But it was like if I was giving myself advice, it'd be like, if you think you're fooling anyone, pretending it's all fine, like people are wound up and scared, and you're just saying it's fine. Like, no,
No, it's not.
yeah. And who are we saving by doing that? We're only protecting ourselves, kind of, sort of.
But are we?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to do.
It is a weird thing to do because we're actually lying to ourselves. We're not only lying to those around us, whoever we're saying we're fine to, but we're also lying to ourselves.
Mhm.
So maybe we think we are protecting ourselves or saving ourselves, but at some point we're going to have to come back, look in the mirror and be like, okay, what's going on? Because it's not going to go away just because we say we're fine.
Right.
Everything comes.
And it's again like, robbing others of maybe even loving you through that. Because
Right.
some of the most reparative and healing moments in my life have been like when I am in that not great state, and like someone still showed me the fullness of their love, right? Not when I thought I was broken, when I thought, I wasn't good enough, like at those like, nose hitting rock bottom kind of
Yeah.
spots. If I hadn't said, gosh, actually, I'm not okay, I wouldn't have gotten to feel that kind of love from people,
Right.
right? The love you feel when you're fine and good and, happy
Mhm.
is different than like when you're, I mean, I think of you, when you were dealing with a health thing and you were just like laying in bed, and I was like, I love you for letting me see you here. Like that
Mhm.
was so endearing to me
Mhm.
that I was let in. I felt let in,
Mhm.
that here you were not feeling great. We still got on Zoom just to check in, and like you trusted enough to be the way you needed to be. Right? Like if you had put pretense over all of that, but that wouldn't have been the memory.
Right.
Yeah. So much.
So much. And I know we'll probably talk more about this down the road, but this was really wonderful, like
Mhm.
lovely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we going chat pack or the end? Because I can, you got
Let's
them?
let's do a chat pack. Is that okay?
Okay. Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for
Hi.
being prepared.
Always. Yes, I'm a former brownie and Girl Scout. I'm always prepared. Okay. I have two questions. Okay. What is the anyway, what is the oldest item you own?
Hmm. First off, I'm a minimalist, so I don't own much. That being said, I think if I include my partner's merging of things, because now it's our home, probably like his grandmother's dishes and things,
Mm,
right? Like the handed down heritage legacy
right,
things. I
right.
can't say I have anything terribly old
Uh-huh.
personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Same, because I'm a purger. Um, and I think right now, I believe so when I was in my former abode, the woman that I was renting a room from, she was moving. And so she was getting rid of a lot of her dishes and things that she didn't need because she was moving in with her partner and to much smaller space. So and she said to me, she's like, look, I'm getting rid of a lot of my dishes, blah, blah, blah. If you want, you can take what you want, take what you need. And so I did pick out this one little creamer pitcher.
Mm.
I would say by the design of it, because it's all white porcelain, but the way that like a mold, the way that it's molded, it looks like it's been around for a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say probably that. I think so. Um, I'm pretty sure that. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't really. Oh, and a blanket chest. My mom has gotten saved, collected years ago, blanket chests for all four of us, and I do have it in my room. I'm not sure when it
Mm.
was built, but it's an oldie.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want me to ask the second question, or do you want to wait till next?
Sure. I'm game if you are.
What is the worst experience you've ever had in a restaurant?
Okay. Hmm. I think, oh gosh, I'm like really racking my brain to be like, do I recall anything that was just super awful? Mm. Well, I will say this from a place of like, I don't really have one that's like really standing out. Um, but I think any place, and I remember this one particular diner that has the news on,
Oh,
eh, the food can be what it is, right? Like, obviously, I prefer high quality, essential vibrations in my body, but it was like, what are we doing here? We're playing the news,
mm,
right? And like, whatever
yeah,
awful things the fear mongering promotes. And that to me was like the worst experience at a restaurant.
yeah.
Um, but
That
yeah, if I think of others, I'll let you know. But I can't say I've had like terrible
mm,
experiences.
that would give me indigestion.
That's enough. If I was on my own, I'd likely leave.
Yeah. I would have. I
Yeah.
would have. Yeah.
How about you?
Oh my goodness. So this was, I'm going to say at least 15 years ago, and I was on a date, and it was sort of a blind date. I mean, we met on a site and had a little bit of, back and forth on email or texting exchange, but no, hadn't spoken on the phone or anything. And he had tickets to the orchestra,
Mm.
and which was lovely, and but he wanted to take me to dinner first. I'm like, okay. And this is someone with quite a bit of money. And he was so awful to the wait staff. He was awful to the host. He was awful to the wait staff. When like it was a scene out of a movie. You know how like people are like this? I I was mortified. I was so mortified. And I was just like, if I knew how to get back to your house to get my car, I would. And just I wouldn't even go I was like, I don't even want to go to the orchestra at this point. You've just ruined the evening. It was, and I just thought people really don't just do that in movies. Like that's how they learn. Like whoever writes movies, that's how they learn because they see people behave like that.
And was that him on his best behavior on a date? Oh my goodness, you know?
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, that's my worst experience. And thankfully, I haven't had one since.
Thank you, my friend. It's
Thank
really
you.
sweet to unpack some of
Yeah,
those pieces of intimacy and connection and receiving and communication.
yeah,
They
and
feel really vital right now for everyone,
yeah,
you know. I mean, that's my judgment. I'm not saying everyone agrees, but to me, like just to have a little bit more support and depth in your relationships.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we really need that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, audience, for being with us. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.